Hey guys, welcome back to another adventure with Jimbo. I'm out here with my good friend Travis. We're out here in the Atlantic side. It's around 18 feet right here. Crystal clear water. There's a good drop off out in front of us, so we're going to see if we can't find anything tasty that lives out here. Hopefully black grouper, mutton, mangrove snapper, anything nice. We're going to do some gearing up, and we'll see you in the water. As you can see, it's not super deep directly under the boat, but this is one of my favorite spots to dive because it's nothing but ledges. It's large, flat spots where it drops directly to the sand, and we really see some really cool life and activity around here. Tons of tropical fish, and these ledges fall down to the sand and create these natural caverns, and there can be kind of honeycomby in there. It just holds so much stuff. The fish that I saw from the surface right here, this is called a Nassau grouper. There's another one featured a little later in the video as well, but they are very protected species, and I don't see them very often, so I wanted to get some footage. You can see them there. Beautiful white grouper with a big black dot right above its tail. And it very possibly could have been the same one. It looked like the second one was a little bigger. But a few years back they went on the protected species list, and I haven't really seen many of them since then. I think I've only seen one in the last 4 to 5 years of diving. Very, very cool to see. So you can see a school of bait fish swimming through. I think those were barjacks. I'm not 100% sure what they are. Travis and I had to have seen at least 25 turtles this day. 4 to 5 of them while we were diving, and then while we're moving around on spots, we passed so many. I'm not sure what exactly it was that brought them in today, but we got some pretty cool footage. We got to hang out with a couple of them. It was just a really, really awesome day. The weather was perfect. Visibility was very, very clear. These ledges are pretty huge, and they are all over the place. I think we moved the boat 2 or 3 times on this spot just to really get a good scope of what's swimming around down there. I often see a pretty decent population of black grouper in the area, so this is that second Nassau that I had mentioned. And if you have your volume up, I do a grouper grunt as I'm trying to get fish in, but this guy actually grunted at me, and I've never heard a grouper do it before. I do a couple of my own here in response, trying to see if I could get him to do it again, but no dice. Disappeared into that little cave behind that rock. There's just so much structure out here, it can be hard to get a pinpoint on certain locations of fish and stuff like that. I find a lot of grouper here out in the sand, and every once in a while they'll decide to grab a rock, but most of the time if you see them on the sand in this spot, they turn around and they head the other direction and just out in the open. There's some bigger broken up rocks right off of the ledges as well that it's just a honeycomb of life and activity in there. It's always kind of worth poking your head in, checking out. My dive watch only tells me my last dive time and my surface interval, but I probably did 200 or 300 dives on this spot this day. We're out here for a few hours, and you know, it's only 35 to 40 feet to the bottom, but it's well worth continuing to dive. So Travis tells me on the surface, as I was poking my head in that rock, right behind me, a black grouper came out to check me out. He was having some issues with his ears this day, and he wasn't able to clear. In the bottom right-hand section, I slow it down right here. You can see the black grouper come out of the rock. See what's up. Yep, right here in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you can see just a long brown shape come out. And he starts taking off the second I turned at him. I watched this clip back, I think 10 or 15 times to see if I could tell post dive where this guy went, but it doesn't look like he stopped. He just kept on going. I lost him in the bottom there. Tried a hot pursuit, but he definitely gave us the slip. That happens a lot. Even if we could have gotten down to that fish, I think he was already feeling pretty spooky, and he was not having it, so, you know, not much you can do about that. It's just the way it works. This is probably one of the favorite grouper hunts that I've had in recent memory. Signal to Travis, just hang out for a minute. I have been breathing up for quite some time. Watching this clip back, when I was looking around here, I remember not trying to make eye contact with this fish, but keep it in my peripheral as best as I can. And I tried to move away from it, but the current unfortunately pushed me back on top of this fish a little bit. So, you know, I try not to swim directly down at a fish, and they tend to not like that, so I try to swim in a different direction, like try to angle down to the sand away from the fish, and then try to scoot back around and then slowly make my approach. I slow this down right here. I dropped right at him, and he said, "Nope, see you later." I slowed this down so you could get a good look at him. He's directly to the right of that spear gun. I tried to do some grunting at him, and I did the old jazz hands or the finger wiggle to see if he could maybe stop, maybe get a little curious, so I could try to place a shot on him, but to no avail. Not having it. Like I was saying, usually when I spook a grouper out of the sand on a spot like this, they don't stop, they just keep on going. I tried to head him off right here at that rock, but he already went up over the ledge. And I thought that was the last we were going to see of him, unfortunately. That was a nice grouper. But right here I slow it down, right off of the ledge. There's a big white sand patch, and you can see him come down from that ledge back onto the sand right here. Right in the center of the screen. It's kind of hard to make out. He was pretty far away from us. And, you know, after a couple minutes of breathing up, keeping an eye on this guy, he was just hanging out behind a small rock with a little sea fan on it. I got the wise idea that I'm gonna drop down into the ledge, maybe look around for a second, see if there's anybody else in the area before I continue the hunt on this fish. I tried to put as much structure between me and this grouper as I possibly could. You know, he was eyeballing me pretty much the whole time, and I'm very surprised he let me approach. But I kept this little rock in between me and him. Got ready to shoot. I was having some fog issues on this hunt. I should have taken an extra second at the surface, but I couldn't tell he was there until he turned broadside to me. And I let that shot go. And, you know, I hit him right behind the pec fin. It's not the best shot, but worse than that, I was a little far away, I had more distance between me and the fish than I usually like. And I shoot a Hawaiian double flopper, and the second he started to run off, I could see that first flopper hanging out of the grouper, so I know it wasn't a great holding shot. I kind of just had to give him some line, let him run.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and just hope for the best.
Turtle coming at us too.
A lot of these caves can be, you know, pretty deep. Sometimes they get a little too tight to fit in, so I was really worried about the retrieval on this fish. I couldn't see him at all. He stirred up the bottom a ton when he ran in there. There was a lot of line for him to play around with, so he dug into this rock as best as he could. After, you know, the first 3 or 4 dives, I kind of figured out that he really got in there. There was a ton of entrances, a ton of ways that he could have squeezed out of here. I could see my white shooting line right there, and I knew that he was back in there somewhere. We still had tension. He was still there. I was very worried about putting any pressure on this fish, and just really not wanting to tear it out. The worst thing you can do is tear a shaft out of a fish that's in a rock, because you don't know if he's going to survive. You don't know if he hit any internal organs, and you just don't want those fish to suffer while they're down there. When I poked my head in on this side, I really figured out that there was a lot of room to work with. It's still really fogged up from that fish going ballistic in there, so I couldn't see anything. You know, the flashlight's kind of like headlights in the fog. It really just clouds it up, and you just cannot see through it. There's a lot of breathing up involved in this retrieval. You know, at 40 feet isn't, you know, a super shallow dive. It's not super deep either, but after the heart rate's pretty elevated from the initial interaction and stuff, it can be pretty hard to get longer than a minute in at 40 feet. I was really hoping I was going to get a shot on him on this dive, but, you know, I kept just easing in, seeing if I could see him. He's just not there, couldn't see him, and before I knew it, I had my fins in this cave as well. It was incredibly deep in there. It's, you know, my wetsuit started to get caught on the rocks in there. It made me freak out a little bit. I was a little uncomfortable. I didn't have that much breath on me for that dive. I was hoping to just poke my head in, take a shot, and then ease back out. I think there was 1 minute and 18 seconds on my watch there. Not terrible, but not great. I definitely didn't want to get snagged in that cave, and you know, with Travis having some inner ear issues, I didn't want to put that pressure on my dive partner. On this dive, I figured out that that guy went all the way in, wrapped around, and went all the way back out to that front side of that rock trying to get away from us. So he definitely tangled up pretty bad. Should have been a little more ready to place a shot on him. I kind of scared him up. I got very lucky that that shaft stayed in that grouper. I slowed the shot down here. I waited for him to stop freaking out for just a moment and placed a kill shot at him. You know, unfortunately, I was diving with my brand new DJI Osmo Action 5, and I had it on internal storage, and the storage filled up on us right as I placed that second shot in that grouper. So we didn't really get the entire interaction, but we got enough. After diving in a deeper spot all day, I definitely let the excitement kind of get the better of me. This is a decent little mutton snapper. He was 18 and a half, and they have to be 18 to keep. I got a little excited. I thought he was a little bigger than he was at the surface. I forgot that our next spot was only in like 20 feet of water. And we kept moving down. It's about 30 here to the rocks. This is a little further inshore. Nice yellowjack came in. Travis absolutely rolled that fish with a headshot. I mean, cracked it real good. And right after, as we were leaving, he tells me that was the first time he ever shot a spear gun, and absolutely placed the heck out of that shaft. That was a great shot. A little later in the day, his ears were still bothering him pretty bad, and we got eyes on a smaller but still very decent black grouper. You know, with him only shooting a spear gun once, he wasn't 100% sold on what his range could be with it. So he kind of spooked that grouper, and I should not have gone after it at all. I wanted to try to put a second fish in the boat with the season closing here in a few days. I was like, yeah, we can just really try for that second black grouper, and I missed. And made me feel like a real bad dive buddy, for sure. I should have given it some extra time. Maybe he wouldn't have spooked out if I hadn't have come off the surface, but there's a lot of things that I could have done differently in that interaction. I anticipated the recoil and shot low. Unfortunately, just barely missed him. So as I was looking for that black grouper that I scared out, hopefully trying to get a second shot at him, I found this little ledge that's down and around 55, 60 feet right here. Found a nice lobster in it. It's my first Atlantic lobster of the year. I don't find many out, and I also don't typically go out specifically for them. You know, I just found this guy hanging out in his little cave down here. He was certainly not having it. My first two attempts at this guy were not on camera. I don't want to show that to the public. It was fairly embarrassing. You know, I tried to pick him up, move him around, and he just kept crawling right back in. I don't know why he didn't just shoot out of this ledge, but it was also really cold down there on the bottom. The thermocline there was pretty icy. Maybe that made him more lethargic. I'm not sure, but he hung around for me. Got very lucky this day between that black grouper and this lobster that, you know, the fish cooperated, which is very, very lucky. You can kind of see bait shimmering around me there. There's a ton of ballyhoo on the surface, and different species of bait fish all the way down to the bottom. Barjacks and yellowtails around as well. I was cutting up a bonita in that first clip where Travis shot the yellowjack, and the bait absolutely swarmed around us. It's very, very cool. trying different angles on this guy. He just kept giving me the slip here. It's happened once or twice for me that I've been able to lasso the horns on the lobster, and I was very fed up. I did not want to have to go through another breathe up and dive cycle on this guy, and I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can get him by the horns. And it did not work out this time. It just didn't have a good cinch point, but I got really lucky, and he flattened his tail up the second he shot back a little bit. So I was able to land that lobster pretty easy. Finally just cooperated with me. Like I was saying earlier, there was a ton of turtles around today, and this guy brought in 2 nice amberjacks right behind him. This isn't a fish species that I target very often. When they get larger, they're prone to parasites and they have worms. And a ton of people tell me that, you know, they cook off, they're fine, they're great to eat, but I just don't take them very often. And I could tell these guys were smaller. They have to be, I think, 28 or 29 to keep, and he was an inch or 2 over, whatever that was. I forget the exact measurement, but I had that lobster, and I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can use the old lobster flasher. Maybe get this guy to come in. He stepped right in, and I was able to put a nice placement shot in the gill plate. I fell for the old lobster flasher. These amberjacks, no matter what size they are, put up one heck of a fight. You never have one just come right up to the surface unless you stone it. You see that big cuda come running in. This was an amazing dive day, and one I will remember for quite some time. One of Travis's first few times spearfishing, and I can't wait to get him out again. It's going to be great. I've got some stuff recorded up already, so probably in another 2 weeks I'll have another video coming out. But it was a great day of getting the new camera equipment all working and, you know, figured out. It's going to take a little bit of time to get everything dialed in. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you on the next adventure.